Councillor Harding, do you mind opening us up, please?
Tēnā koe te koromatua, kia ora tātou, mihi ana kia koutou katoa. He ino i tātou. Pou hihiri, pou ramarama, pou o te whakaro, pou o te tangata, pou o te aroha. Te pou e hiri nei ia tātou, mauri ora kia tātou, haumea hui e, tae ki he.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. Thank you for putting a blessing onto this morning. And elected members, I just remind everyone again, the meeting is being live streamed. And for those and the members of the public, as you'll all remember, we basically make sure that if you are in approval of something that's been said, that you use the sign language approach. If you are unapproval or disagree with something, okay to use the thumbs down. Again, as I said before, and I've said many times, when there is noise, sounds going in this chamber here, they are reverberated quite significantly through the speakers and then go through the live streaming. So those who are listening on the live streaming then unable to hear people actually communicate. So at this point, as we go through our meeting, we have any declarations of interest, please make them, conflicts of interest, please make them known. We have one apology this morning from Councillor Roka and Councillor Cooper, sorry, we've got two apologies, one Councillor Roka and one Councillor Cooper. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Peters, you're moving. Councillor Mackenzie, you're seconding? Yep. And we also have an early departure of Councillor Jovic if the meeting goes past 9:45. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Before we move on to the decision report, I'm leaving over to the staff to provide some explanations over some of the work that they've gone through at this point to give a clarification and so that the elected members have a bit more understanding of the whole picture. Staff.
Tūtahi me koe nika koe takai kaunihira Harding, nau e wā te tuhorahi mo tātai tēnei rā, me koe nika koe te koromatua, ki te tuarua, koe tau nā kai kaunihira, takai hautu, nā kai mahi o te kaunihira nei, Atamaria Morina. So it's my privilege today to sit in front of you and provide some explanation at a high level of where currently we're at. We've worked through you recall when we worked through the issues and options paper, we were provided with direction that we wanted a lower rates than what was set out in the year 2 of the LTP of 10.7. To alleviate any reconsultation with the LTP, we've taken 1% off there at 9.7%. So essentially, where can we find that savings is what we've worked out within operations that we will spread that pro rata throughout the organisation. And so we're rest assured we have confidence that we'll be able to cover the 1%. There is an outstanding 5% on top of that, 5.1%, as we mentioned in the high risk OPEX, that SLT and staff will be working through over the next couple of months and be able to provide you with presentation of some options of where we believe is the best avenue or opportunity for us to make those efficiencies or the savings of 5.1%. It by no means will be an easy task, and it's probably fitting that whilst the last thing that we want to be doing is reconsulting on the LTP, and we want to keep our levels of service, there may be the risk with the amount that we are saving that we may need to go into, cross into the levels of service. Obviously, we're going to try and avoid that in the first instance. Te koromatua, I think that's probably the main thing that we've got to look at. So the 5.1 comes to approximately 5.2, 5.3 million that we're having to find in OPEX, which is a massive savings and does put the operations under a bit of pressure and provide some good informed advice for you in terms of what is the decision, the informed decision that you'll be able to make upon us finishing that work. So things are still very tight. I'm hesitant to promote any extra OPEX in this morning's session. However, the decision is all up to the collective of the council today. Staff have worked hard to get where we are at the moment. There is also some assurance required from our elected members around the modelling with the change that we went through in the issues of options and going from the SUIP to the UAGC. That can probably, I might hand it over to my learned colleagues to explain. We have the table there, and by no means are these 100% accurate, because we don't have the time to do the full-scale modelling, but we do have an approximate on what the rates will be throughout the various categories of landowners here in Whangarei District. So I might hand over to yourself, Alan.
Thank you, Aaron. Through the Chair, Nicolene is just about to circulate, if Your Worship is happy for that, a table showing examples of the rates, the same ones we used in the consultation document, with an estimate of the impact if we make the changes you'll propose to issue options to bring the UAGC back to $901. The rate's at 9.7% increase, and the universal stormwater charge of $172. They'll show the difference in between the three examples compared to this year's rates. I just point out this is an estimate only, because when we set the rates, it's based on the rating information database as of the 1st of July. We're still working through the objection process for the revaluation. We're still working through our rating maintenance, where we complete all subdivisions and any other changes to the properties in the district before that 1st of July cut-off. So those won't be the exact rates, but they'll give you a fairly close estimate.
Alan, would you like to walk through the spreadsheet we've got in front of us?
Thank you, Worship. So, as I mentioned, these are from the consultation document. So the top line there shows, under the grey shading, the general rates increase at 10.7, the UAGC at 500, and the stormwater based on land value, with the increase there. That was put out as a preferred option. The next column had the UAGC at 909, with that stormwater rate at land value. That was also shown in the consultation document. And the final column is the revised one based on the direction you gave us at the last briefing on issues and options, with a general increase of 9.7. The UAGC increased by 9.7 from the current amount, which takes to 901 rather than 909, and a flat stormwater rate of 172. Now what that does, because for a low value property, say that first row there of $200,000 property, their stormwater rate was lower on the previous model. Now it's gone higher. They were paying around $70, now they're paying $172. That's why their increase will show as higher than the 9.7. Has the opposite effect for high value properties, where they were paying much more in stormwater, now they're paying less. Therefore, their overall rates increase will be slightly less. So that's the sum impact of the changes you proposed to date.
Thank you, Alan. Aaron, have you got anything else to add to discussions here?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Simon, have you got anything you want to add to this?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay. Elected members, you've had the spreadsheet which has been handed out to you, which we actually asked for. So we've now got a clear indication of how the costs will be distributed. Knowing full well that the council has $132 million to basically generate within the year to cover its costs. And that was within the long-term plan, within the annual plan documents actually clearly stating that. Do I have a mover for the motion? I I will move the motion that's on the table here and I will read it out so everyone can understand what we're going through. Recommendations that the Council, 1, notes and considers the 792 formal submissions received on the draft 25 to 26 annual plan and the draft 25 to 26 fees and charges consultations. 2, will introduce a district-wide universal stormwater targeted rate of $172, including goods and services tax, GST, per separate used or inhabited part of the rating unit, or SURP. Will set the uniform annual general charge at $901, including GST, per separate used or inhabited parts, SURP, of a rating unit as per the financial strategy for the 2024-34 long-term plan, LTP. 4, will not proceed with the proposed temporary rates relief for farm-to-business zone land consulted on in the draft 2025-26 annual plan. 5, will increase the general rates of 9.7% for the 25 to 26 annual plan in recognition of the tough economic environment and the consequential financial hardships being faced by many ratepayers, noting that the draft 2025-26 annual plan included increased general rates by an average of 10.7%, as per the financial strategy approved in the 2024-34 LTP. 6, notes that a 1% reduction in the general rates increases for 25 to 26 will require ongoing operational cost reductions of approximately $1 million, so as to not deviate from the benchmarks set in the financial strategy for the 2024-34 LTP. Staff propose that those cost reductions can be met by reducing operational budgets funded by general rates on a prorated basis. 7, will increase the targeted rates for 2025-26 as per the financial strategy for the 2024-34 LTP. A, water rates of 5.7. Local government index, cost index LGCI plus 2.5%, which includes allowances for increased central government imposed levies and higher than expected costs as set out in the 2025-26 annual plan consultation document. 1, an additional $15, including GST per SURP, to the water supply charge, the availability water rate and the unmetered water rate to recover the government-imposed levy. 2, an additional $8, including GST per SURP, residential wastewater connection, and an additional $5, including GST per PAN, for non-residential connections to recover the government-imposed levy. 3, increased backflow prevention rates to recover higher than expected cost increases. B, wastewater rates of 3.2 LGCI. C, flood protection rates for the Whangarei Flood Protection Scheme of 3.2% LGCI. 8, notes that the growth will be allowed for in expected revenue from rates as per the financial strategy for the 2024-34 LTP. This budget assumption is to account for growth in new rateable properties and allows for an additional 1.3% for general rates and stormwater and 1% for water and wastewater. 9, notes the submissions requested $3.5 million in council support in the 25-26 towards the build of an indoor sports complex or indoor sports facility as part of Stage 2 of the Ruakaka Recreational Centre development, and the request be considered as part of the 2027-37 LTP. 10, notes the request from the Glenvervie School for an unspecified amount of funding in the 25-26 for a road safety barrier next to the school, and the staff will continue to engage with the school and the Ministry of Education. 11, will increase the 2025-26 fees and charges as detailed within the Statement of Proposal. 12, will approve the preparation of the final 2025-26 annual plan and the 25-26 fees and charges scheduled for presentation for adoption to the June 2025 meeting of council. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Reid, you'll second that?
Yes, Your Worship, for the purposes of discussion only. If it
Appreciate
would
that.
be
Thank you
noted.
very much.
you.
Elected members, as you can see, the team have gone through that, and the spreadsheet in front of you, I did a spreadsheet in preparation for this to try and work out whether we can get the calculations, and the spreadsheet that's being provided does align very similar to my one, which I did yesterday morning at 7 o'clock. So I've gone through the costs here, just so you understand, and I break it down. The $172 for the stormwater, that's $8 million a year this council has to find for stormwater repairs and maintenance. That's also dealing with the growth factor of our stormwater repairs. That's our pipes in the ground, things like that, which are actually happening. We have, while our council is in some ways recognised as a growth council, we are still using Stats New Zealand figures of 1% growth, which realistically is not, in my mind, not dealing with the actual growth that's actually happening in our district. We are significantly higher than that. My calculations show that we're running at roughly 2.5% every year. So we're actually having a huge amount of growth. And that's mainly because people are leaving Auckland and moving north, or moving home. I'm also quite conscious of the effects of a lot of other things that we're having to put onto our ratepayers, which includes the, as highlighted in item 7 there, the costs imposed by central government for the Commerce Commission and DIA to monitor our water supplies. Something our council has actually been doing significantly well. And while our council has been doing this well, the rest of the country has not. And unfortunately, with most legislation, it becomes as a blunt tool and it's thrown across the whole country, and we are now having to be penalised for something which is actually, when questioning DIA and when questioning ComCom, they even turned around and said, well, we probably won't come and monitor anything of yours because of the fact that you are doing so well. This makes a farcical of this type of fee. However, this fee is not something that this council is taking. This fee is being handed on to DIA and ComCom, not us. While it's there, we're charging it. It is not coming to us. Councillors, I was very uncomfortable with the 10.7%. I make it very clear I was very uncomfortable with that. 9.7, I'm still uncomfortable with that. I would still like to be less. However, I'm also well aware of the costs that it is taking to get a lot of our roading up to scratch. We are still feeling the effects of Cyclone Gabriel 2 years on, and while many people may laugh at that, as a council, we've still got a lot of slips out there and some major ones on Parahaka, which may not be fixed for another couple of years because of the damage, and it's still moving. So this is what we've got here at the present moment. The staff have worked it out, the annual general charge of $901. There was a little bit of rounding in there when I worked out previously. And that will in turn reduce the amount of rates needed from the land values. So when I'll just tell you what I did with the calculations. According to the calculations that I have, we have 46,610 properties, rateable properties in Whangarei. With the $901 works out to roughly just under $42 million, which is generated by that one fee. And with the requirement that we need to generate $132 million to run the district, we need to find another $90 million, which is then spread amongst the land rates. At this present moment, councillors, I'm going to open up for discussion, and I see that Councillor Benny has first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to move an amendment, please.
Which amendment would you like to move?
Right, so, don't panic, nothing too major here. Number 10, I want to change to commits $30,000 for a road safety barrier alongside the Glenbervie School. Then I want to put a new 11 in. That council commit $400,000 plus GST as a community grant to the Hikurangi Business Association for the replacement of the footpath in King Street, Hikurangi, on the western side of the road, on the western side of the main road, from the Foursquare to Union Street, subject to conditions that will be worked through with staff alongside Councillor Simon Reid, Councillor Scott Mackenzie and Councillor Gavin Benny by 26 June. Sorry about that.
Is that all, Councillor Benny, or you got more?
That's it.
That's it. Do I have a seconder for Councillor?
So 11 will become 12, 12 will become 13.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Mackenzie, you're seconding that? Councillor Benny, you'd like to speak to that, please?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry to ambush the process a little bit, but it's been forced upon us, to be honest. Firstly, the Glenbervie School project is about safety of our kids. To put that off any longer, if something were to happen, I don't think any of us would be able to rest. That should be a given. Hikurangi footpaths has been the bane of my term in council. I think every councillor here and I think every staff member here agrees that they are a disgrace to the main street of Hikurangi. Council has identified Hikurangi as the next growth area, yet we have people falling over on the street there because the footpaths are substandard. Councillor Mackenzie and I have tried to get the Hikurangi footpaths put up the pecking order. However, we have been unsuccessful in doing that. I see the footpath being replaced out here at Kaffler Park, a perfectly good footpath. A perfectly good footpath. I ride it regularly. I see the footpath being replaced in Kiripaka Road, a perfectly good footpath. The priority should be on those footpaths that are substandard like Hikurangi. They are not. This is the only way we can get this across the line. This is the only way we can get this brought up the pecking order. We've arranged a meeting with staff today in which we will go through the conditions of this, but I just want to point out that staff have come up with a cost of close to $1 million for these footpaths. I believe we can get it done for $400,000. I met with a contractor there this week, who's an approved contractor for council, and he believes they can get it done for less than half the cost. I honestly believe this is the way of the future. It takes away the bureaucracy, it takes away council's issues with building these sorts of things and gives it to the community to build and to hold to account ourselves. It's still got to meet council standards, and that's why I want to work with Councillor Reid and staff to make sure it's up to standard. But again, I apologise for this, but this is the only way to get this across the line. I thank Councillor Hulse for his guidance on these issues. Without him, I think it would be another 3, 4, 5 years would still be going. So I urge you to support this. I know this is going to put a little spanner in the works, but if we have to drop the item that's number 10 on the footpath list and put Hikurangi ahead of them, then that's what we have to do.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor Olsen, you'd like to speak?
I just would like to ask a question, please, Your Worship. Is it possible to take that amendment in parts?
Well, the amendment would actually be, go through as the first part. So yes, you can take it in parts as amendment. However, once it becomes a substantial amendment, then it becomes a substantial motion, okay? So.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you.
I'm just going to pose to Jim before I come to you, Councillor Yovich and Councillor Mackenzie. Jim, can you please, noting that the original motion said the Glenview schools had an unspecified amount, and this is now specifying $30,000. Is this within the budget restraint of the area, of your area?
So through the chair, the budget that council approved in the long-term plan for safety improvements is fully allocated for the 3 years. There was a significant reduction in safety spend, both from NZTA and that's balanced by council as well. So there is no budget for this particular project. The team are working with the school, if you'd like me to expand on that. But
If you can expand, please. I'm needing more information.
yeah, okay. So there have been 2 accidents where cars have gone off the side. Both of those have been at night. The biggest risk is the existing pole barrier that needs to be removed. That's the biggest threat to life and to serious injury on that corner. From a prioritisation perspective, it's not a location that would be ranked high from a prioritisation perspective. What the team are working with the school is that there needs to be an increase in car parking. So the main risk on that school site, as those who were at the meeting a few weeks ago would have seen, is that cars are backing up onto the main road. So as you come out of town, heading towards the school, then there's traffic backing up on that hillside. So there's a lot of work to be done. Ministry of Education have got a big role to play, and we'll work alongside them, as well as the school, to help improve travel patterns and how parents use the car park that's there. So that's the background. The other aspect that the school are looking at potentially relocating some of the water tanks, which will provide extra space on the left-hand side, which in future opportunities to widen the road there so that cars that are queuing to get into the car park can get out of the moving lane.
So will this barrier interfere with the other side of the design factors that are being planned for that area, or that presently being worked through with that area, the school?
Through the chair, it's just premature for us to give any advice on that. The work that's being done is looking at the car park, looking at the what can be done with the space when that's removed. The other major risk that the school highlighted at the meeting was that there's a break in the footpath on that section where the school is, so that the school also want to see the footpath connected through, and there's an opportunity to do the footpath and potentially some form of barrier, but that just needs to be worked through.
Where will this funding be coming out of if it was 30,000 we put there, since you've got nothing in your safety budget?
It's not something that we would seek council direction and talk to our finance partners. It would be, if it was reallocating budget, it would be reallocating budget away from other areas that have been prioritised. But fundamentally, there's no budget, so it would be, it would be a debt increase, I guess. But I don't know if my finance partner has any more thoughts on that.
Councillor Yovich.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question in terms of the barrier. Would the amendment be more appropriate if there was a time frame set in Councillor Benny's? I am concerned. My concern would be is that post Gavin and Councillor Benny's retirement from council, that we could still be sitting here in 3 years before a barrier. So, just the amendment from your perspective. The question is it appropriate in terms of actually having anything done, and in terms of confirmation of an end date?
the amendment at this moment doesn't have an end date, and you're asking the staff whether there needs to be an end date on there?
That's my question.
Yeah.
Through the chair, the work that's been done is with Ministry of Education. So whilst I welcome, if councillors choose to have a time frame in there for a solution to be worked through, we would do our best. But we are working with 2 other parties as well. So with all the schools across the district, there's work going on, and we're trying to make sure that we get all that work done. So if councillors choose to put a time frame on it, it raises that specific school in the prioritisation, but to the detriment of others.
The next question in regards to that is picking up on something that Jim has said, and we'll take into account also Miller's Lane. Would it be more appropriate that a full study be done by an end date to actually fix that whole area out there? Because it's not, there's a few issues there that do relate to Glen Burvey, same with Miller's Lane. There's land next door, and that, in terms of a bigger picture, should an appropriate study be done by a certain date, be it 31 July or 30th June, and we commit to it, that a full report comes back as to a bigger picture. So would that be a better recommendation?
I think it's a bit hard for you to be asking the staff for their recommendation of it. You need to be a bit more clarification over your question that you're asking.
Would the staff would the SLT appreciate a better strategic plan of that area to assist the councillors' decision making?
Through the chair, the staff are currently working through a crash reduction study for the whole district, so that would be something that we could report back on. That will give a better indication of the problems across the whole district and what that looks like. The second part of that would be that we have a major rehab for that corridor planned in the next couple of years within this LTP period. So again, that could provide a more holistic answer to come back to councils with.
Next question. In terms of the funding side of it for the footpaths, I mean, I'm in favour of that proceeding. The travesty is that that was bumped off because funds were directed from another area of the district to actually take over this, unfortunately, and that went against some of our infrastructure's demand or, requests and requirements. So that's unfortunate that Whangarei has missed out with Whangarei in particular getting all the work for Kaupapa when, in terms of priorities, Whangarei was in dire need. Probably my next question is, in terms of the water, the additional charges, we've just seen Whanganui come out and they've got I think it's Whanganui, they've got a 2.2% increase in their rates. Are some councillors not on charging this new water levy?
Councillor, I think it's a very hard question to ask whether another council...
question, it's either yes or no.
Well, no.
Are they charging it or not?
Councillor, I have to remind you, you're asking what the opinion of another council is actually doing, and that's something we have no control over. All we know is we have been given this fee, and we've been told what the amount is, and then we have to account for that fee. So we've been made very, very clear what our council has. We cannot talk about what other councils do.
Through the chair, in terms of the stormwater, I know note that the new rate is that's putting in is a new fund to fund maintenance that we should have been doing consistently. And in your opening sentences, we come back to old Gabriel, where I'm over that excuse, and it's just poor. This is just an extra tax. I know I have to go into another meeting, but I will get in, and I'm not going to get answers to my other questions, as you've just pointed out. So in terms of the amendments and or the motions that are going to go forward, I will be opposing points 2 in terms of the 122, in terms of the stormwater targeted rate. 0.5, the increase in 9.7% is far too high. We need to be under 5%. And 0.7, the targeted rates for the water rates. I will be opposing this annual plan motion, and we need a total reset. And in my time as council here, I have not seen a change in mindset. We say we're lean, we're not doing things right. The decision-makings that have been made are poor. We've just signed off a maintenance tender that will open us up to $30 million worth, $20 to $30 million worth of extra stuff, expenses. You know, things aren't being done right here, and this is just another tax when the wrong decisions are being made. So as it stands in terms of the motions, I will be opposing this, and that if that means that it's a proper reset of the annual plan, so be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Move on to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Quite a bit to cover off there. So, firstly, the Glenbervie crash barrier. So we met with the school and Board of Trustees and members of the community there. There have been 2 cars that have crashed into the car park of Glenbervie School. There's a risk to the kids in the school there, parents and also drivers, because currently there's a galvanised steel fence in place, which is known that that kind of fence design can impale drivers or occupants of the car. So there's an urgent need to do something there, and the community have clearly asked Council to respond. What Council will come back recommending is that we continue to talk with the Ministry of Education and the school. We know, because we were at the meeting, that if that is the course of action, nothing will happen. So good on Councillor Benny for moving a small amount of money towards actually getting something done. With regards to the footpaths, there were $250,000 that were committed each year, 1, 2, 3, for unsubsidised footpaths, including Whangarei and Hikurangi. That was supposed to be enough to cover all of the footpaths that were specified in that list. What happened was Council then came back and said it was going to cost $670,000 for the Kōpipi footpath, which took up the majority of that fund for the 3 years. Now, Councillor Benny has come back this morning saying there is a way that we can halve the costs and get a good result by working with communities and local contractors. That is the kind of thing that we are wanting Council to explore and execute, so that we can get good outcomes for the community at a better rate. And Councillor Benny has been talking about this since the very first meeting of this council, empowering communities, passing on smaller amounts of money and getting them to do the work. So it's actually a great initiative, and we could potentially explore that for the Kōpipi one as well, so that the money goes further.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Excellent. Stormwater. I just want to speak to the stormwater new targeted rate. Now, I've been asking questions about this for the last couple of years, so I just want to summarise how we got to this point. So historically, stormwater has been paid for under general rates, but because of local board has done well, legislatively we've been asked to separate that cost out and make it a targeted rate. That's fine. So for the first year of the LTP, Council decided it would be debt funded. And so kick the can down the road. What are we going to do for year 2? Now is the time that we're deciding what we're going to do. So the idea is that we charge every SUIP an equal amount of money, and that is an added new tax. So for the last 2 years, I'll question this logic. If you're adding a new tax, why aren't you offsetting the general rates? Because that would make sense. but that has never been picked up. And I think it's a flaw in the process, how this has come about. I questioned this consistently, and I asked in the briefing about a week and a half ago for council to explore other options. Through the chair, I was ignored. I asked for either debt funding or phasing to be explored. It wasn't picked up. So I just want to highlight that I'm not happy with how this process has taken place and the result that we've got to. I think it's lacked transparency, and that doesn't engender trust from our community. I think I'll leave it there, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. And make it very clear, you were not ignored. We asked the team to come back with information, and they weren't able to come. That's it. You've had your time to talk. I'm now going to go Councillor
Was
Peters.
ignored.
Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, on footpaths, being an older person, I support Councillor Benny's motion to get the footpaths fixed up in Hikurangi. I had put in to have the hospital shops footpaths fixed. I tripped there, and evidently there's been another old woman who went right down. So, you know, it's not a minor thing for our citizens, our elder citizens, uneven footpaths. They're a big thing. It's a big thing. I note, and the workers have put it in the plan, but it's 3 years away before we do it, you know. So that's how it rolls, really. It's sort of quite a long time away. So I support that. I also want to thank Councillor Hulse for his bringing together all of us, basically, to discuss this issue and think of logical ways of dealing with it. And that was really helpful for me. And apart from that, I support this very long list of motions. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move 2 amendments, please.
We can't do, unfortunately we're unable to do that. Procedures basically say we have to deal with the amendment first that's on the table. And you second the original motion. So we have to deal with the amendment first before you can actually, you can signal that you'd like to do another amendment.
Sorry, Your Worship.
You can signal that you can do another amendment, but it won't be until after this one's dealt with first.
I will be.
And you, as I've just been highlighted, you are 100% correct, Danielle, sorry for correcting that. Because you seconded the other motion.
For the purposes of discussion only.
Yep. You won't be, of the original motion, you won't be able to move an amendment.
Fine, I'll have somebody do that for me. Thank you very much.
Councillor Connell.
Thank you. Just a question, first of all. In regards to the Glenbervie School, the accidents that have happened on that have had issues with that fence, is there a time that those happened that we're aware of? I know that it's going to be an issue regardless, but...
So what we'll do is we'll pose that question to Jim. Jim, do you have the crash data in relation to the Glenbervie School?
Through the chair, I think there's 2 responses I'm hearing. One is in terms of the crash data. I don't have it to hand, but we do have crash data. As I said, the crash reduction study will get us the most up-to-date data that will be available. But as Councillor commented, we are aware of 2 crashes on the corner, coming from different directions, both at night.
Okay. Yeah, that was just... Cool. But yeah, no, I'll speak to this if I can, please. Yeah, it's... The biggest thing that we have is we'd all like it to be less. We'd all like the cost of this to be less across the board. Nobody wants to have to fork out the money. The other thing is, if we want that to happen, we need to expect less. And there's people out in our communities that have come from higher communities, have come from spaces that have higher needs, that have spaces that are historically tragic, that we need to actually put this funding in, as highlighted by the amendments that Councillor Benny has raised. I'm not going to go against the items that he's put in. I agree with the need for these spaces. I somewhat disagree in a manner of speaking with the Whangarei one, because there are spaces that do not have any footpaths that are in dire need. I'm not going to, I support doing this, but there's places that I've had requests from that have said, we don't have a footpath here, can we get one? We have a footpath in our own area that is at I don't know what angle, ridiculous angle, where people are deciding to walk on State Highway 1 rather than actually walk on the footpath, let alone the maintenance that needs on that. We've historically underfunded on stormwater, as heard, as we've seen, and the process I'm not going to go into. Councillor Mackenzie's already raised that around it. But we've historically underfunded on that, and it's shown in the space that we've also obviously got maintenance that we need to deal with as well, and obviously we've got a cyclone that we've had that's caused major issues, which we will not say the name of. But it needs to be dealt with, and one way or another, we need the funding to be able to do that so that we can actually have people get access through these spaces, so it doesn't actually impact on the roads as well as properties, as well as the on-flow down the streams, which NRC has to help deal with, but then it comes back onto our properties in the CBD. One of the issues that I've raised in this, that it's going to be going through, but the finding the way is the sports clubs are going to be hit with a fee that is huge. Now, the ability to deal with that is going to be something that's going to be, they'll have to figure out for the sports fields and whatnot. Personally, I agree more across the board of everybody should be funding it because everybody uses them as well, but they have a higher use, yes. It is what it is. It is going the way it is. One of the big concerns that I've had with this whole thing is in the potential reduction of fees. Now, whilst I agree with supporting bringing it down, we're in a challenging time right at this point in time, I really, 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 really do not want to see major reduction in cleaning and waste. These areas are places that pretty much everybody will be accessing. The toilets, if people go into these spaces, it's one of the most common things that I've seen up on Facebook and whatnot, where people are going into their things, they're not clean. Yes, people need to respect the stuff, and the users of these are absolutely the ones that cause that. But we need to do our best to keep that as clean as possible. And landfill and stuff like that is, not landfill, fly tipping and whatnot. Another thing that's popped up in here is if people respected the items that we had and didn't vandalize stuff as often as they do, we wouldn't have $160,000 in this thing here to worry about. The amount of signs I see pushed over is ridiculous, especially on the irregular, and especially when our new recent development in Ramanga with the community playground has been planted up and looked after for the community. And some people have gone through and ripped up plants and thrown them all over the slides. It's ridiculous and disappointing. It's a challenging time. I'm doing my bit. I hope we all can do ours.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Honourable Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions, please. So through the chair. The two amendments that we have on the screen at the moment. So this is a question, really, I think, through the chair to Jim. Do you support these two amendments, Jim, that are up on the screen now?
I think
Point of order on that,
I think the question you're actually asking, and I'm going to make sure I get this right. I think the question you're actually asking is, are they achievable by the staff, not whether they support them, because that's something that you cannot actually ask the staff of.
Okay. Are they achievable then, through the chair?
Through the chair, with regards to Whangarei, the paper that we brought to the last briefing highlighted the risks associated with that. So it's, on the face of it, it's a concrete footpath, but we highlighted the risks around the impacts of construction on the buildings that are there, the impacts on the canopies, and the risk that council faces in terms of undertaking that work. And so our advice has always been to Council needs to recognise that risk, because it may go really well, but there's a lot of risk there and it may not go well. And council can't be left with the liability of a building which is impacted during the works, and then suddenly council is footing the bill for damage. So our recommendation has been to recognise that risk and try and find a way of working with the business owners to minimise the risk to council and get the work done safely. So I think that will continue to be our advice from an officer perspective.
Just a point of order, please, Your Worship.
Councillor Benny, yes, what's your point of
Well,
order?
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jim, and I agree with what you say, and the purpose of my amendment is to take all the responsibility away from council, and we'll give it to the contractor. The community will engage the contractor. Council will, in effect... I'm making a point
No, Councillor, you're making your point of order. I'm now have to deliberate on your point of order.
Yes.
You're not actually
Well, I
dealing
haven't finished my point of order.
what you've covered over, you're starting to cover over things, you're re-deliberating why you actually made that motion. You had that opportunity
No, I'm
to
responding
do
to a comment from staff.
that. Unfortunately, Councillor, that is not what a point of order can be used for. So you have to be very careful about when your point of
I
order
am
is there.
being very careful.
Okay, so what the staff are saying, are they giving an explanation over what they can do, they achieve with the funds, which was the question that was posed by Councillor Holmes. That question is being answered by Jim.
No, it wasn't. My point of order, and if you listen to it, you would understand that he wasn't answering that.
Well, we have to go back to Jim, and we have to go back to Councillor Holmes, as he is asking the questions at this present moment. If you are going to ask a question, you can ask a question of Jim, because at the moment you cannot do a point of order over a statement which Jim has made, because he's explained to the reason what Councillor Holmes' question was asked.
I disagree.
Councillor, that is what it is. Jim, can you please explain and make sure you understand fully, is what has been asked achievable?
The council commit $400,000 to get an outcome which is a concrete footpath with no damage to the canopies, no damage to the properties, no liability to council. I can't answer if that's achievable. The work that we've done to date hasn't reached that point, so there's a risk there. So.
Councillor Holmes?
Okay, so thank you. I'm happy with that response. I've got another question, if I may, through the chair, Your Worship. So, we've reduced the general rates increase 9.7, and that was following a meeting we had last week, I think it was, and it wasn't until this meeting that we've seen the full implications of that when we include the UAGC and the stormwater increase, and I'm pretty shocked to see that the total increase, the highest total increase there, is as high as 16.9% when the UAGC and the stormwater is taken into account, albeit the underlying rate we've dropped from 10.7 to 9.7. So the question to the staff is, and I think I know the answer to this already, but have the staff done any work on calculating what the general increase would need to be pitched at in order to keep the total increase in that final column that we've got there, so that none of those figures exceed 10%? And I think I know the answer is probably not, because we didn't ask you to do that, but would I be right to assume that?
Through the chair, not only do we not do that, that's unachievable, because we're mixing fixed and variable amounts against a rating base where there's impact on revaluations coming through as well. So there's so many variables in there, we can't do each property having the same impact, whatever we do. There's always going to be ups and downs from an average. We're going to do a set average amount.
Okay, yeah. So if I may just briefly speak to this then, Your Worship. So, okay, so thank you for that, I appreciate that. So, look, I support these two amendments. I mean, I think the safety barrier at Glenbervie, it's a relatively small drop in the bucket, and I think that's just sensible as an interim. Although I do hear what the staff say in terms of there's a much larger piece of work on that whole corridor planned over the next couple of years, but I think as an interim, that seems to be very sensible, so I would support that. In terms of the setting aside $400,000, the reason I asked the question of the staff, clearly what we don't want to do is throw money at a problem only to find that we don't get the desired outcome. But I applaud what both Councillor Benny and Councillor Mackenzie are trying to do. We've all, as councillors, walked those footpaths when we did a tour of that area and talked to local communities. We've seen the state they're in. So in terms of trying to be a circuit breaker and try things differently, to do things different, to bring about change, I will support both of those. Thank you. Now, the final thing I just wanted to say, Your Worship, is are we going to be taking these in a point at a time? Because it's a very long...
We can do that. As I said, it's already been asked for by Councillor Olsen, so we will be doing as much as we can to lump things together. And councillors, I need to point out, if you're going to have discussions with each other, not in the chamber. That's disruption to other councillors and also to this meeting. Councillor Peters.
It's a question,
Yep.
Your Honour. One of the things that Councillor Hulse proposed last week was that we postpone rates valuation increases. Can we do that?
That is a question I'm going to have to pose to Alan. I don't know whether we have any say over the valuations because that is done by an independent contractor. However, Alan?
Through the Chair, can you clarify what you mean by postpone?
I believe
I don't mean postpone. I mean postpone the increase of charges on rates increase changes. I think that's what Councillor Hulse had proposed.
While you could do that in terms of setting in your plan, what that will do will mean you're not complying with your financial strategy. You set a long-term plan, which will require you to an LTP amendment before you can set the rates. So effectively it's not, because what you're doing is effectively, unless you make massive cuts to operations, which will impact on service levels, which triggers LTP amendment, you will be running a massively unbalanced budget. You will not be meeting that aspect of the financial strategy. You will be deferring moving to a everyday funding balanced budget for several years, and you will not achieve your desire to repay debt in the later years of the plan. You also face a credit rating downgrade. All of those are specific goals in the financial strategy, so that is not practical.
That answers your question, Councillor? It was a bit hard to answer your question because it was a bit confusing, but I was trying to understand what...
Sort of.
Yeah, okay. Team, I need to get a very clear indication here when it comes to the footpath side of things in Hikurangi. I noticed that it's within the amendment there, it's clearly stating that it's coming from a community grant. Is that, while that's not in the budget at the present moment, is that achievable, coming from a separate item? Simon, you want to?
Following the item 13 being added, I've just been conversing with the finance manager and the chief financial officer in regards to this method as proposed, and essentially the 400,000 would be an operational grant, so it would come out of OPEX, and it's likely to tip us into an unbalanced budget situation and will not be in accord with Council's financial strategy. So there's an implication there of the way that that's currently proposed.
That's not quite the question I was asking there, Simon. I'm needing to understand, is at the present moment it's been proposed that it comes out of the community grants, and is there funding within the community grants to allocate for 400,000?
You would have to, you could do it out of that, but you would have to basically, it would reduce the community grants by 400k to do that.
And what is the present budget for the community grants? Or what is the...
Chair will check that. It's more than $400,000, but that would be the outside policy, so there'll be some further resolution required to achieve that.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you say that again? please.
So what Ellen says, it's outside of the statutory requirements and therefore require another amendment to the motion, correct? Is that the wording you said, or you said there has to be worded a separate way?
Oh, at the time of the plan adoption, I'd suggest we'd have to bring back some a further recommendation, just outlining why you're deviating the policy for community grants by doing this. You can do that, but you should make it really clear why you're doing it.
Okay, so that would be done within the 26th.
Stage.
Okay, right. Okay, so we're going to go Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Am I able to move an amendment now?
No.
No.
We have an amendment on the table
We
which
vote on this, and
Yep.
then I can move it.
Correct.
Thank you. Just wanted clarity.
Yep. Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to give a notice that I want to move an amendment as well when these other two have been dealt with. First off, I want to read a commentary from a paper I wrote immediately after our submissions, because what I do during the submission phase, I write down all the comments from every speaker, and then I review it. And I just want to highlight this, because this is going to have a bearing on what I say in the future. After hearing the submissions today, my initial assessment was that the submitters were angry, disappointed and disconnected from our councillors and council. That's really sad, and it's a place I do not want to be. Their sentiments portrayed that our consultation was very poor, our options were slim, not fully explained, and were directed for one outcome, most of which the submitters opposed. This is the first time our management also came under fire to this extent, and we need to address this concern, and positively. In short, I feel this is the worst hearing I've attended. The submitters coming. There were no comments like, I feel the council is doing well and we support your direction in our consultation documents. Quite the opposite. The message was, we are hurting and the rates are unacceptable and unjustified at the level indicated. That has been clearly indicated to us. So moving on from that, what are we going to do about it? I've said all the way along in this process that I'm supporting a 5% rate increase. Why I said that is there's two reasons. One is we need to drive change. Change does not happen. There's 14 people responsible for driving the change. Councillor Reid and I, right from the start of this term, said we're going to do something in roading. And we've made significant progress. We've got in-house staff, we've got our new long-term contracts written out when the staff said they needed an extra year to do that. We've already got it out the door. And that is a show of change and leadership. And we've got some really good contractors, and our work rate now, we're getting a positive return on our work to date, where we used to get 40% of work completed in time, is now up to 80%. That is a marked improvement, so well done. Councillor Yeo has also indicated that we should go for 5% increase. He is our chair of our finance committee, and I'm his deputy. We've spoken to our senior management in our finance area and asked how are our carry forwards going, how is our general work going, etc. And what can we do to reduce our bow wave of carry forwards we take forward. Because it's long been said that we actually are committing to too big a workload. We are waiting for those answers from our finance team. We've asked them to come back to us with identified savings. So there's a lot of work in the background. To get on to the submissions, the amendment on the floor today is come out of frustration of not working through things. On one hand, we've just finished a long-term plan. These are an annual plan issue. It's been highlighted now. We've had submission. It's our responsibility to hear what our residents are wanting. This is council doing what council's meant to do. Staff are there to follow our lead. So we must lead. Some of the other things I want to point out right now is people talk about all these things upset in the process at this stage. What we're suggesting here is 0.04. If we spend an extra $1 million through this process right today, Our total turnover of this council is around 240 million. We are asking for 1 million if we all push the boundary here. Less than 0.05 of 1%. This is our job, to listen to the submissions, make our judgment, get support around the table, because we want to move the district forward. Why I want to say that is, our Mayor has quite rightly said, we are a growth council. In local government New Zealand, we aren't in a provincial category. We are now in a metro sector. Only district council in the metro sector. The rest are like, we're in with Christchurch, Dunedin, Wellington, Tauranga, Hamilton. They're all city councils. But we've got growth. The only way you can go forward with positivity and keep our credit rating, at the current stage we've got an AA credit rating. I've been a councillor here for ages fighting the issues that our responsibility, primarily our responsibility, the 14 of us elected members, is to make sure we represent our residents. Number one priority, nothing else. And that is what I'm standing up and saying this today. I'm urging you to follow the council process. We've all been through it before. We know the annual plan submission, why they're there, but we must do something. When right is wrong, you know, we've got to correct the wrongs. What people perceive as right. And as for this rate increase, I'm not too impressed with this, because my residents in my ward have got basically a 16.9, a 14.3 and a 13.6% increase, because they live in a really nice ward that I've been representing a long time. So I've got to go and answer to those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Councillor McKenzie, you've already spoken. You've got a question?
I'm okay for now, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Reid, you'd like to speak? Or you guys?
If I speak to this, will I be allowed to speak if there's an amendment later?
Yes.
Just clarifying, I would not have seconded the original motion had I known that I was putting myself in a predicament. Thank you, Councillor Hulse, for your words of wisdom, and Councillor Jovich, who's had to dash. We've been ambushed this morning, and I think it's kind of taken off the main focus of why we're here. Everything that Councillor Hulse has iterated this morning, I fully back. He is a great man to have at your back. Not so if you're in front of him arguing a point. We've been through this on more than one occasion, and I'm not overly happy with it, because in all these options here, I've got residents in my ward who are in every one of those, and I can just about feel the arrows heading for my back now, except for those with a really low value. We do need rates increases, but, and there's the word, but, we have to be very, very considerate of those that we ask to pay them. And to that end, we've just heard that we're running a mega business here, and 1% is not a lot in the bigger picture. I am concerned with number 10 on there. Had I not been taken by surprise, I was planning to back number 10 and speak to it, which I will do now. I've had a meeting with the staff and Jim, and I've had an undertaking that we will be able to do something around the Glenbervie School, and we were hopeful to bring that back by June the 26th. Funding we would have hoped to have found within our budget, so that we're not just going out and spending a bit more. I know it's for safety and a good cause, but we were trying to make that all fit within the present budget. you see the little chevron signs on the side of the road and other bits and pieces around the place where we feel we could have probably found enough money to have made that safe. There's a lot of work to do out there, and the school and its board of trustees need to take a big step forward here and get their parents under control. The day I visited out there, and I've been back since and watched from up the road, it's abysmal. The driver behaviour out there is absolutely abysmal. When you see where they park to pick up their kids, we saw a guy walking up the road with his child on the bottom side of the corner, nearest the traffic, while he stood on the bottom side and he was safe, and the cars were whipping around the corner. You know, not just, I couldn't believe it. So I'm not in favour of that amendment in there, because we are working on a proposal. Had I been consulted by others, I could have made that clear. Number 13 is also a case in point. We do have a procedure that we're working through, and I would be expecting staff to come back to me. I'm quite happy to be there and work with Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Benny. I think it is a worthwhile project. It has been shunted by the Kaupapa Crescent work, as has quite an amount of other work around the district. That's what happens when you one-up the situation that you have in a plan. So I'm not against that. The wording I'm dead against, and that will be brought to light after the vote. I think we can find a way through this, but there's certain criteria that must be met, and I will be insisting that this criteria is met before we commit money to it, and I do not want to leave this council in a position where we're going to have comeback if something goes wrong during the procedure. So just, you know, once again, I've been put in this seat to do a job, and I do it to the best of my ability. There's a fair bit on my plate, so sometimes I don't possibly keep up with the information flow, but I cannot commit to that because that is going to have a budget blowout for us. So we will find a way, though. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Reid.
Yep. To do with, I'm right behind Councillor Hulse on the 5% as well. So yeah.
Yep. Councillor Mackenzie, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
With regard to point 13, can I just please clarify a couple of points there? It says a community grant, not from community grants. I'd like to draw that distinction. And the other question is there any reason that can't be a CapEx allowance rather than an OpEx one?
The way that's presently worded, Councillor, is exactly that. It says as a community grant, you're correct. And as in relation to CapEx, as for OpEx, Alan?
Through the Chair, any amount paid to another party to work on our behalf, unless, in this case, we've done it as OpEx, even though it's a capital grant, because they're doing the work, they're contracting the party to do the work, not us. Now, while it's a capital item, that will be back to us when it's done and come through as OpEx, but even that movement comes through the profit and loss account. So the grant goes out as a capital grant, which goes in that OpEx, and it comes back to us as a vested asset, and then gets added to our balance sheet at that point in time. The accounting treatment is definitely, it's OpEx, not CapEx. Therefore, it impacts on our balanced budget.
I believe, Councillor, we've actually had that question posed previously during the long-term plan as well. And
I think that the wording needs to reflect that this needs to be a capital allowance, and so I would encourage staff to guide us on how best to reword that.
yeah, and that's possibly something that needs to be discussed later Unfortunately, the motion we have on the amendment...
I'm asking because I think, having seconded it, that this motion doesn't reflect the intention behind what Councillor Benny is trying to achieve. And so I'm trying to get the wording right, Your Worship, so it does reflect that.
And Councillor, as I've said many, many times, if an amendment is brought to me early enough, I usually work with the person to try and get the amendment worded correctly so it's covered off. When people bring things up at the last minute and propose it, this is what the problems happen, and therefore the wrong wording or incorrect wording comes through. This is something that we all have to deal with, and unfortunately, we are in a situation now where we've got the amendment on the floor. There's been quite a bit of discussion on it. We cannot change it unless the original mover of the amendment and the seconder approves it.
That's what I'm asking, Your Worship, is for the original mover and myself, the seconder, to amend, to reword the amendment to reflect the intention, given what we've learnt from the CFO.
Then what I would encourage at this present moment, Councillor, because of standing orders, I would encourage you to go through with the amendment as it is. If it fails, another amendment gets put up, and you work with the staff to produce the correct wording for that amendment.
Your Worship, I disagree with the process.
That is the correct, Councillor.
On many occasions, we have reworded amendments to get it right.
Before
We can
discussion
adjourn the
has
meeting to
taken
do it,
place,
Your Worship.
Councillor. Councillor?
Adjourn the meeting.
Councillor.
Can I ask if we can adjourn the meeting to
Councillor,
get the
I
wording
am
right?
running this meeting, and unfortunately, you do not run the meeting. You've had your turn. I'm now going to move on to Councillor Golightly. Councillor Golightly.
It's a tough one to follow. I just want to talk to the amendment. I mean, Councillor Benny said, I mean, bringing this up like he has. I mean, he had no choice. So I absolutely 100 support him. And Councillor Hulse, thank you for sort of collaborating all our submissions. The consultation process, as we knew, was flawed. It's always been flawed, and it's, you know, yeah. And I encourage us as councillors to stand behind this and back it and show our unity. And, you know, sort of back our ratepayers instead of hiding behind a flawed system and consultation process. So, yeah, I just want to say I 100% back this.
Thank you, Councillor Golightly. Councillors, look, I want to just highlight a few things that have been said in here so far. Councillor Benny's amendment, which has come up there, I have major issues with item 10, not because of what the funds are for, actually because we have another situation which has been highlighted to this council not long ago, which is about Millers Lane, which has actually had some serious damage being done to those properties as well. And for us to signalise out one area and not deal with the problem as a whole for both areas, surprising enough, the Glenberry School is on the same Kirapaka Road as Glenberry Road as Millers Lane is also off it, and it seems to be, speed seems to be an issue with both situations. It's hard to turn around and signal out one piece of area. As has been highlighted with Kokopiki Road, or Kopipi, the road in relation to the footpaths, it's hard to sort of like signal out one area above another when you specifically have a whole pile of issues within our district, not just one. So to turn around and signal out one area, you're putting preference over that area over another. And in Millers Lane situation, we had a house completely damaged, plus on top of that, they've had three other accidents that have happened there previously in the last 10 years. So you turn around and choose one area over another. This is the responsibility of elected members. Now, I read number 13, and I take Councillor Benny's words, I read that quite clearly as being a community grant. I read that quite clearly as an OPEX, and I read that quite clearly as something that the team can work on to get the project, to get the item to come back to council by the 26th of June. That's how I read it. And I believe that was the intention of it. That's how I read it. So there doesn't need to be an amendment on that. And while again, I say, we have a situation here. A lot of the stuff which has been coming onto our council is out of our control. I am not happy about that. I've already indicated that I'm not happy about that. We actually have to deal with the situations that we've got. We have got a district, while some elected members do not believe that Cyclone Gabriel has any effect, it has. It has had so much effect to our roading environment because of lack of maintenance, because of lack of money put aside to do the job properly. That's what the 17.2% last year was to do, was to fix up that, because that was a major issue. We've been dealing with that. We've been getting on top of a lot of stuff. And I take my hat off to Councillor Reid and Councillor Hulse for doing exactly that, making sure that our roading projects are out there and getting the jobs done. Stormwater, sewage, water supply, getting out there and getting the work done, getting it actually on the list to get done. That is important because of our growth. Like majority of the elected members here, I will make it quite clear that I am not happy about the 9.7. Again, I am aware that we actually have to deal with these jobs. We have to deal with the projects that we've got in front of us. And without subsidies from central government, because we are not getting the subsidies from central government at the present moment, because they haven't got money. Where we are getting subsidies, we are working them to the best degree to make sure it's best for our district. Some of the roading projects that we've received over the last couple of years have come from subsidies from central government. Councillor Gillard, have you got a question?
I do have a question. We've been talking about Miller's Lane, and I just want to say about Councillor Benny there, number 13, and what he's sort of proposed in his amendment. Isn't that what we are supposed to be doing as councillors? Bringing these things to us for discussion, and not sort of just sort of waiting sort of years and years and years down the track for it to sort of come up. So my question is that not our job? Is that not what we signed
And
our oaths for?
that is correct, Councillor, and that is exactly what Councillor Benny's done. And as I said, the item is as it is. That is correct. He's brought it to attention. On top of that, it is also the right of the elected members to also talk with the staff to work out solutions going forward, which is what Councillor Reid and Councillor Hulse do regularly. And if people follow the processes, then the projects can actually get done in the right order. And unfortunately, we have had times where certain items have been raised above others. So yes, what Councillor has raised is correct. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? I will put the amendment, just to make sure the amendment is just dealing with removing of item 10, replacing it with the item there, and adding item 13. That is the amendment, just so that you clearly understand the amendment. Division has been called. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillors Peters, Mackenzie, Holmes, Harding, Hulse, Golightly, Councillor Connett, Councillor Benny.
Those against?
Councillor Reid, Olsen, and His Worship the Mayor.
That has been carried and made the substantial motion.
Your Worship, a point of clarification.
Yep.
Are we allowed to speak to the substantive motion now that the amendment's passed?
Absolutely, Councillor, because that now motion has become substantial, and since we went straight from moving the motion to an amendment, you now have the right to speak to the original motion, and you haven't spoken before.
Councillor Reid and I both indicated further amendments. That's got to be addressed first.
Absolutely, Councillor Hulse, you're absolutely correct. Councillor Hulse, I believe, was first with his amendment. Councillor Reid.
I was actually caught on the hop there a wee bit, ambushed. That the First Amendment would be number 10 be reverted back.
Councillor Reid, I'm sorry, I apologise, because you seconded it, you couldn't actually move the amendment. That's why we talked about that. That's why I was going back to Councillor Hulse.
Councillor Hulse is first, so I'm still framing this one up so that we can get number 13 through.
Councillor Hulse, you signalised an amendment.
Yes, I want to move an amendment, and the amendment is the Whangarei District Council grants a postponement of rates to HKRS Holdings, Marsden Point Road, and my amendment would be the council grants rates, postponing the rates of payment of $300,000 for 2 years. And I'll speak to that if I get a second.
Sorry, Councillor, are you able to just get the wording with Danielle first? So we just make sure we get the correct wording for...
I'll move that the landowner, okay, move that Whangarei District Council grants rates postponement of
Councillor, would you like to take your light off?
For 2 years.
Thank you.
Your Worship, why I move this is, when we went through our briefing paper...
Right, Councillor Hulse, we'll just get this motion up first, just so we can clear, and then we get a seconder so you can speak to it, okay?
Danielle, the property owner is HKRS Holdings, Marsden Point Road.
Whangarei District Council grants rates postponement of $300,000 for a period of 2 years to the property owners of
HKRS Holdings.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Golight, you're seconding for discussion? Okay.
Thank you. When we heard the submissions, the landowner came in, and he is the one that his rates now have gone from $40,000 to $414,000 in 1 year. And he cannot use the property for what it's zoned for, because he is not allowed to have wastewater connections to his property. So, it's what I said previously, our job is to make sure that we're fair to our ratepayers and residents. How can it be fair when a person is zoned commercial, is charged commercial rates, and is not allowed to hook up for commercial purposes? I'm appealing to councillors. So if this was you, put yourself in this person's shoes. If this was you, do you think it's fair that you should pay that increase in rates? I'm not saying discount the rates, I'm saying postpone the rate payment until and that'll coincide with our long-term plan, postpone his rates be paying for 2 years so he can go ahead and develop the land so he's in a position to pay commercial rates, because at the moment he's been told he can't hook up to wastewater supplies because we haven't got the capacity to do so. And I think that's totally unfair. And when we went through this page, our normal briefing is there's a staff made a whole lot of recommendations, but we didn't address the recommendation individually. We went back and took them collectively. And I don't agree with the staff recommendation at the time, and I still do not go with the staff recommendation. But we didn't address things. That is very clear, and that is why I wanted as amendments. I want councillors to first just remember what I've been saying at this meeting. We represent residents, and it's our job to correct wrongs. And this, in my mind, is totally wrong to put that type of rate increase on a person when he can't use the land for what he wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Just for clarity, just to make sure we understand it very clearly what the amendment actually is, you're asking for it to rates postpone it, not removal, postponement of $300,000 for a period of 2 years. Okay. And is 2 years starting from this year or starting from... Okay. Just to make sure I understood very clearly what the motion is. Councillor Olsen.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Doesn't this all come back to, for me, and I struggle with this, isn't this about enabling council rather than disabling? Don't we need to look at the culture here in council? and get on with progress rather than being stymied all the time on projects.
I can't take that as a question, councillor, so that's going to be again, when we're dealing with the agenda that we have in front of us, that's something we can take offline. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Bishop. I've got a more direct question.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, really. I recognise what Councillor Hulse is trying to do. But the point of clarification is, do we not already have a system and process in place within our rates, rebates, and so on and so forth that would allow us to do this without this being added to this as an amendment?
Right, and that's a very good question, one we can pose to Alan.
Through the chair, no, we don't. This has been considered through the previous LTP when this change was made. It's come back to council since then, and you've chosen each time not to do this for these properties.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there is no other process. So if we want to do this, again, so my clarification is this, Your Worship, in your view or in the Democracy Team's view or the Rates Team's view, is this the only way we can do this given that the processes that we've currently got in place? Is that what we're saying?
So from what Alan has just said, and also from what Alan has explained previously, we have a procedures and policies process that we go through when people have issues. They go through those issues. If they're unable to be resolved, then an item has to come to council for it to be discussed to go whether they postpone it or not. Alan, is that correct? Just make sure I've got that wording correct.
We never want a postponement back on that basis.
No.
That's more applied for resource consents, things like that.
But a rates rebate is completely separate again. So this is actually a postponement of rates. There is no, what Councillor Holmes is asking, is there any rules within our policies and procedures in relation to rates, rebates and all the aspects of rates, there an option for the staff to just postpone things for a certain time period, or has it got to come back to council?
Nothing in our current remission and postponement policies to cover this sort of situation.
Okay. No. So does that answer your question? Yep. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to double check you.
I'm just wondering about unintended consequences for the other.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. Any other discussion on this item? Councillor Olsen, you've already spoken.
No, I asked a question.
No, I'm sorry, that wasn't a question, councillor. We took
did.
that. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. That was not a question to be able to ask. You can ask a question if you want to.
I want to ask a question.
Go for it. Okay.
Now I've forgotten what my question was.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Golightly. Councillor Golightly.
That was quick. God, I'm glad I came in today. This is just exactly what we should be doing. Councillor Hulse and number 14 and how he is now supporting his ratepayer, you know, and I'm going to bring it up because Jimmy Daisley comes to mind always. If we had done something like this when his quarry was, well, he wasn't able to use it, we would not have had the problems that we have had, and he would also not have had the problems that he has had. So I want to thank Councillor Hulse for bringing this up, and I encourage us all to bring up also things like this with our ratepayers that have problems.
Okay. Councillor Holmes.
Sorry, Your Worship, you caught me eating a sweet. Right. So I'll talk to this briefly now, if I may. So whilst I applaud and support the intent behind this, and it's quite right that Councillor Hulse, as we all should stand up for our ratepayers, our local residents. I feel this is a blunt instrument to achieve what should actually be in our policies in terms of rates, review and rebate and so on and so forth. So I would like to see it come back to council in terms of a change in our our rates policies so that we can address it via a clear policy. This feels like it's not, I don't believe this is where it should be in terms of singling out this single ratepayer, because I suspect there will be other ratepayers, perhaps not quite so extreme in the dollar value, the quantum, but there would be other ratepayers for whom this would equally apply, and I would like to see the policy applied evenly across all ratepayers rather than singling out one in the terms of the way this is worded. So I won't be supporting this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Benny?
Council has the ability to affect people's lives in a major way. So, in this council, in my 8 years in this council, at times we've worked together as a team and I think we've achieved really good things. At other times we haven't. This is one of those times. Anybody that heard the submission from the guy with Councillor Holz's recommendation, amendment is about, everybody agreed that what is happening to him is unfair. Most people agreed. Most councillors agreed anyway. Although Councillor Holmes says quite rightly that there will be other affected people out there that are not part of this, we've all had the opportunity to bring that before this meeting. We've all had the opportunity to make changes. And I applaud Councillor Holmes for making this change. This is the frustration that we reach. We listen to submitters and mostly we ignore them. Here's one that hasn't been ignored. So I will be supporting Councillor Holmes. I think it's a very good amendment. And I think it sets a tone for where we're going to go in the future. We need to work together as a team.
Thank you, Councillor Benny, for your speech. I just need to correct you on one thing. Councillors do not ignore the ratepayers. They do very much listen to them. And unfortunately, there are times where we're unable to proceed with what they want because it may not suit them. However, we do actually listen to every single ratepayer. So I need to correct you on that. Councillor Peters.
I support Councillor Holmes, and mainly because he can't, the chap can't.
Councillor Reid.
Sorry.
Please, Councillor Peters is speaking.
The chap can't connect to the water. He can't progress his development. As far as I believed, this council was about supporting business, getting started. And if there are other people that have got, and I know that out at Rukaka there's been lots of issues with the wastewater, and we do need to support those businesses, small businesses and large businesses. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Connor.
Question. Sorry. Question on the pausing of this rate. What will happen in? Will the other rates be affected? How will that? Will it cause any issue or change?
That is a good question to throw to Alan, whether there will be any ramifications from doing a postponement of the rates. Not a reduction, but a postponement.
Through the Chair, yes, there will be. There'll be a direct consequence of this. Whenever we set the rates, we make allowance for any remissions and postponements, and with calculating the rate in the dollar. So the effect of this is the next 2 years, this will be spread across all the other commercial industrial ratepayers. They'll pay for this, and then when the rates are paid in 2 years' time, their rates will come down to offset that. But in the meantime, there will be the effect of this change if it goes through.
Just to make sure you clearly understand, Alan, the question was actually in relation to the ramifications of a postponement, not an actual removal of the rates, to make it very clear.
Yeah. That is correct. In terms of how we manage our account, set our rates, each year we take account of any postponements or remissions are in place for that year, and we will set the rate in the dollar to offset those. So for the next 2 years, there'll be a slight increase up to commercial industrial ratepayers, and they'll see that come down again when the rates are paid at the end of those 2 years. That is how rates are set.
Point of order.
Yeah, Councillor Holtz, your point of
First,
order.
this is a general debate between councillors. If people want to have comments, they should become a councillor. The other one is
Now, Councillor, what's your point of order here? I need to make sure.
Point
very
of
clear.
order.
Bishop, I was asking a question
That-
from the
That's
councillor.
correct.
I take exception to that.
Alan,
The point of order is, just in a previous comment, when Councillor Holmes asked the staff member about raised postponement, he said he had not had a policy to go to current policy. Now he's just given the direct opposite answer.
Councillor Hulse, I understand where you're coming from. You're saying that Alan has provided two different answers there. However, Alan actually made it quite clear that there was no... I clarified this on Alan, and Alan actually clarified it for me. He said he did not have a policy that he was able to follow, and the only procedure that was come back was to come to council for a postponement, and he agreed to that. Then he answered the question of Councillor Connop in relation to what the ramifications were, and then explain what those would be. So I'm unsure what your point of order is at this point, Councillor Hulse.
My point of order is mixed messages when we don't need it. Amendment is quite clear. It's quite short. Councillors know what the amendment is.
I appreciate that, Councillor Hulse. However, your point of order has been overruled here. Councillor Golightly.
Do I have to, am I asking a question?
You can ask a question only, Councillor, because you've spoken to
I
it.
can ask a question.
Yep.
This just highlights the whole...
Question?
Oh, okay. Can I get around to the question? Why, there we go.
Yep.
Why are we concerned about the ramifications of an organisation when we should, as councillors, be more concerned about the ramification to the property owners of HKRS Holdings?
Appreciate your question there, Councillor, but that's not a question to the staff that they can actually answer. That's a rhetorical question to the elected members, so we cannot approve that question. Councillor Olsen?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just with regard to the ramifications and for clarity, so that's 300,000 for a period of 2 years, so that's 150,000 a year, correct? We're asking for a... So really, 150,000 a year spread across... For goodness sake, isn't it really quite infinitesimal?
Back to your question there, Councillor Olsen. Again, that's a rhetorical question, not a question to be able to ask to the staff. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora tātou. I'm wondering if I should go out the door and come back in and start again, or if I had the right karakia this morning, because, I don't know, I'm still stuck on the spreadsheet. It's just driven me to be dumbfounded and in shock, sorry, because, yeah, the numbers don't go down. You try and reduce the rates, but the accumulated costs puts us worse off. But anyway, coming to number 14, what we have here right now, is the biggest single issue the fact that they cannot hook up to...
And yes, Councillor, to answer that question quite clearly, that was the comment within the submission, that was the comment within the whole of the document was quite clearly that they couldn't develop and they lost developments because they could not hook up, because there was no connections for the sewerage. That was very clearly made within their submission.
Is that, and that falls on our plate?
That does fall in our part, yes.
Because there's no connection to the new, is it they're waiting for the...
They're waiting for the wastewater treatment plant to allow more connections in. That is correct.
And that will be possibly 2 years off, which is about why we got to 2 years. Sorry, just building on a little story here.
To understand your question, yes, that's correct.
And this is the only property in that area that is impacted?
This is the only property which has made it very clear for the reason why they have asked for a rates postponement or an actual change in the rating policy or to do that. That's why they've specifically come to council and specifically asked.
They're the only ones that can't hook up.
Correct.
And have asked.
Yep. There are other properties which cannot hook up as well. However, this one had developments and they made it very, very clear that they lost those developments because they could not hook up.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Worship. What was their rate strike prior? How much a year was it?
Ellen, are you able to answer that question, please?
Was it 40k or 40k?
Gone up to 400.
Yeah,
I
okay, that's
believe,
answered my
just to
question.
make it
Thank
very,
you.
very clear, Alan's just going to get that figure for us, so just give it 2 seconds to get the exact figure.
I'm trying to get the figures through, Alison, of both the increase in rates and the increase in land value over that time, because both need to be read in conjunction together. We'll try and pull it out. Haven't got it to hand though.
Just for clarification for Councillor Reid's sake, that was a item that was actually raised by them, and they said it was over a time period. Correct, Alan? Because it was actually 40,000 at one stage, and then it's gone up over since then.
Yes, and the increase in rates is driven both by change in rating policy and exponential growth in land values there, which they have benefited from.
Yeah. So he'll get the exact figures for you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Olsen?
Yes, a question. Thank you, Worship. So if I'm in support of this. I will be voting for it. However, my concern is that we could be setting a precedent for other properties.
Councillor, I apologise.
Yes, and my question is, seeing we don't have a policy, should we not be looking at a policy to enable this to happen?
So I will reword that to a way the staff can understand it. Is it within? Can we reword our policies to make sure we're dealing with postponements?
Your Worship, we've just been through a rating review where this was considered. We've been through a issues and options last week where this was again considered, and you've chosen not to do anything in the space. If you want to change your position now, that's obviously your prerogative. I don't think we can do that in a week though.
Okay. And Alan, just to highlight again, if I remember rightly, and you'll be able to correct me because this is a direct question for you. Alison said there would be 18 months to do a complete rating review. Is that correct?
To do it properly, yes.
Okay. And the intention was to have that start after this annual plan process. Is that correct?
Well, that's up to the new council to decide what they want to do as part of the leading the next LTP.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
I'd like to speak to the amendment, Your Worship.
Go for it.
Thank you. I just want to cover off my understanding of how the rate increases have sort of flushed out, and it's actually really helpful to have this little table here today. You could argue that we probably should have had this 2 or 3 months ago, and then we could have considered things a little bit more carefully, but very good to have it, better late than never. And just because, people can't see this necessarily, but what we've got is an initial range with the suggestions from the consultation document of a 1.4% increase ranging through to a 58.5% increase. And we saw headlines in the newspaper around that because that is outlandish, and none of us could support that. What we've come to is actually a range between 8.3 and 16.9. Those figures are inflated by the new tax, the stormwater tax. If it wasn't for that, we would be more around our actual strike of 9.7. And then just the added complication of the revaluation, which has skewed some. So that's why you have a range from 8.3 to 16.9 because values have changed, and that particular aspect of the process is outside of council's control. So I just wanted to give a bit of a summary of my understanding of how where we're at and how we've got to it, but it's not ideal. Those rates are not ideal, but they're a hell of a lot better than some people paying another 58.5% on their rates. So just to clarify that. Also, I would like to rebut some of the comments around the Glenbervie crash barrier being prioritised over Miller's Lane. That is not the case. What has happened here is that there is a specific item in the agenda that addresses a crash barrier in Glenbervie. There was a formal submission made to the annual plan process, and that is why this topic is being debated today, not because of any preference or prioritisation, because they went through due process and it has come through to us to consider, and that is what it is our job to do.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. No other questions on that amendment. We will move the amendment. All those in favour? Councillor Hulse has called the division. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Reid, Peters, Olsen, Pulse, Golightly, Connop, Benny, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Holmes,
And those abstaining?
Councillor Mackenzie, and Councillor Harding.
That is carried. Moves to a substantial motion. Councillor Mackenzie, you want to speak to the original motion?
Your Worship, am I able to make an amendment at this point?
Yes, you can.
I can, given that I seconded the amendment.
One second, just double checking here.
He's already made an amendment.
He seconded the amendment on the previous one.
Yeah, he can't make further amendments.
Apology, Councillor Mackenzie, no.
Yeah, okay, I just want a clarification. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillors, okay, so we've now discussed this. Councillor Golightly, yes.
Can we take this in parts and a division, please?
Councillor
Meaning the parts being the Councillor Benny's amendment.
So just to make sure, I'll quite happy to take this in parts. I need to make sure I clearly understand everyone's intention of the parts. We're not wanting to take every item in parts. We're just wanting to lump everything together except for items 10 and 13. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Councillor Hulse, you wanted to take parts of different things, didn't you?
I just want a point of clarification. Councillor Benny's one's already been moved as an amendment.
Correct.
It becomes part of the substantial motion.
Correct.
So it's not an amendment anymore, it's part of the motion.
Correct, that's correct, Councillor. Councillor Connop, you wanted to...
Question.
Yep.
I'm not going to... Does the order of this have any implications? Does, with the original, well, the 11 and 12 that is there, do they need to be near the end for the other things to be in part of it? I know that it probably doesn't, but I just thought I'd ask if it's necessary, because there's been times where...
We have to do certain things in correct order, correct, absolutely. Alan, you've got an answer to this?
Oh, no, trying to put a clarification on point 14, please.
Point of clarification on 14, what's your...
It's not clear to me from that wording whether this is 300,000 per year or 150,000 per year.
The way the wording is there is that the Whangarei District Council grants rates proposement of 300,000 for a period of 2 years, so it's over the 2-year period.
So does that mean we postpone 300,000 in the first year and nothing in the second year?
No, it's
It's
300,000.
open to interpretation.
The way that's
only
quite...
clear what the intention is, please.
Okay, quite clearly the motion is written with 300,000 over a period of 2 years, so that means it's a total of $300,000 over 2 years.
But is it the full 300,000 in year 1 and nothing in year 2? It's not clear. It needs to be explicit, please.
Well, I understand, Alan, why you're bringing that question up. That is something that can be done offline quite clearly and actually can go through. The motion is actually stating 300,000 over 2 years, which is what the motion's on there. Sorry?
Clarification, if you ask Phil now.
If we can. Councillor Hulse, just for the sake of Alan's question, did I have the correct interpretation of your motion? Thank you. Councillor Peters.
I'd like to foreshadow an amendment. Sorry, you wish.
Councillor, we're actually coming into the motion of all of the agenda item now. So you want to do an amendment? You can do an amendment right now.
Can I just get clarification?
Yep, Councillor Connor.
Well, the same one that I asked a moment ago. Is the order any issue?
Yeah, good question. Sorry, Alan, I need to... actually, this would probably be a question to Aaron. Is there a specific way the order can be done? It needs to be done?
Through the chair, we would just place it in something that makes sense and has a nice, it flows. So we won't be jumping all around the place.
A point of order, Your Worship, if I may.
Yep, Councillor Harding.
Just a suggestion, is this an appropriate time to take a short adjournment as we're coming up to that while we work through these details? Would that be useful?
I am looking at the time. You are right. We are literally 10 minutes away from the two-hour period. I'm conscious of our next meeting straight afterwards, so we will take a 10-minute break at this present moment here. Actually, elected members,
What has to be worked through?
actually, Councillor, what we could do is we will not take a adjournment right. We'll actually put the motion. I've put the motion, so I'm putting the motion actually as it is. In parts, we've asked for it in parts we'll do those in parts, those two pieces in parts. However, it has actually been carried, the whole motion is a substantial motion. So we'll start.
Point of order, Your Worship, if I may.
Yep, Councillor.
Councillor Peters said she wanted to make an amendment.
Before that, actually, Councillor, I actually said I was going to put the motion, and then Councillor Peters said that she wanted to foreshadow a motion. That would be after the motion, after the whole motion has been put.
Right.
Point of order.
Councillor Connor?
Going back to mine, my biggest concern is around number 12, because if that one if it comes first and those ones aren't in it, does that cause issue? That's what I've been trying to find out.
Thank you for your clarification. We'll approve the preparation of the final annual plan. That will come as part of the substantial motion, yes. So it doesn't make a difference which way that's going to be in. No. Okay.
The motion incorporates both.
Correct.
Yeah, so if you put that now,
yes.
That's the end of it. There's no further.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. So we're all clarified here. Councillor Golightly, you have another question? I'm putting the motion.
Yeah, I understand that. So we are going. So we are going to take this in parts, as in what
as was requested, which is the whole motion, bar the item 10 and 13, which will be done as the second part, because that's what you've asked for. So we'll now do the whole motion. All those in favour of items 1 through to 14, excluding 10 and 13. Division has been called by Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Peters, Mackenzie, Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Reid, Olsen, Holmes, Hulse, Golightly.
Those abstaining?
Benny and
Harding.
lost.
That's lost. We'll now do the next part of it, which is...
That's it.
Sorry?
That's it. That was the substantive motion.
No, we were taking in parts, two parts.
Oh, sorry.
Just to make
10,
it...
yeah.
Okay, so the second part of the motion, which is 10 and 13, those in favour, raise your right hand. Please read the names out. Yeah, the word division was called at the beginning.
Mackenzie?
Please raise your right hand for the items 10 and 13.
Councillor Peters, Mackenzie, Holmes, Hulse, Golightly, Connop and Benny.
Those against?
And Harding, sorry. And against Councillor Reid, Olsen, and His Worship the Mayor. Carried.
So that's now been carried. So the only items that have been carried is 10 and 13. Elected members, at this point we'll be taking a break of 10 minutes to deliberate what we'll actually having to be able to do next, due to the fact that we now do not have, we're not able to provide a motion up to the 26th of June for a substantial motion. So we'll now take a break for 10 minutes. Staff. Took a little bit longer than 10 minutes. My apologies, councillors. We need to make sure that the agendas were all what we process, our next process will be. Be well aware at this present moment, councillors, we have not been able to create a rates for the public. So now that means we've actually got to close our council meeting at this point here. We will bring back another agenda item on Tuesday with the full agenda with some modifications. We may, as I said, we'll bring the wording back to you, so you will be hopefully getting that out later on today. We are in a situation, though, where we do need to strike the rates before the 26th, so that they can be prepared for the 1st of July for when the rates get changed over. So we are in a very tight time frame to actually get this through. So there will be a lot of discussion and a lot of working through the motions to get those out through today, so you've got it clear within the time frame. Councillors, that being that, we will close this meeting at 10:21, according to that clock up there. 11:21, my apologies. That was 11. And that's it, the meeting is closed.